Welcome, Dr. Vaine.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a great delight to be here with Green Chameleon. I've been an admirer for many years. And as you know, apparently KM has a big stake in the knowledge management field. Knowledge management is a terribly complex, messy and expensive enterprise to engage in. Frequently causes great trouble and distress to the organizations that apply it. And we work very hard with our clients to make sure that the knowledge management initiatives cause as little trouble as possible and in fact preferably as little impact as possible on the business. So I'm delighted to share what we have today.
Okay. We've had a question from one of our viewers. They've told us that they have to increase knowledge sharing in the organization, but there isn't a potent pill they'll ever be able to succeed. What should they do?
Well, this is a very common problem. Knowledge sharing is one of those things that senior managers do like to latch on to. So this happens all the time for us. And of course, knowledge sharing is, in many instances, is very undesirable in an organization. For example, if you increase the amount of knowledge sharing that goes on in the organization, then people start asking for all sorts of complicated technology and collaboration tools and searching instruments and so on. As soon as they become aware of knowledge and information resources elsewhere in the organization, they do want to have access to it, unfortunately. So it's much better if they just remain unaware. So knowledge sharing is one of those things that you really do not want to happen, but unfortunately senior managers do think it's a good thing to have. So you have two challenges there, and we use two particular techniques to address those challenges respectively. The first one is the behavioral challenge, which is you want to discourage knowledge sharing as much as you can, and for that we recommend the use of a technique called depreciative inquiry. And then the second challenge is the political challenge, which is that your senior managers want to have the impression that knowledge sharing is improving. And for that we use a technique called social network paralysis. So let me describe each of those in turn. In depreciative inquiry, really at the beginning of a knowledge sharing initiative, we recommend that you set up a series of sessions, of sharing sessions, preferably as formal and as stilted as you can. They might be after-action reviews, they might be brown bag lunches, although we do recommend that at brown bag lunches you do not provide food, because that does tend to make people relax. And you don't want people to relax, you want them to be as uncomfortable as they can. You want to make sure that you have subordinates in the same room with their managers, and so on. But in depreciative inquiry, if in one of these sharing sessions some unfortunate soul does happen to make a contribution, then your facilitator must use depreciative inquiry techniques to respond. So let's say that we're in an after-action review at the end of the project, and somebody on the project team says, in the course of this project we realized this supplier was unreliable. Now a good depreciative inquiry facilitator will immediately jump on that and zoom straight into the poor unfortunate soul who's made this contribution and say something negative. For example, how come you didn't realize that before the project started? Or they might say, so how much damage has that caused to the impact of the project, to the performance of the project, and so on. So you get the picture. In depreciative inquiry, any contribution must be depreciated. And this not simply doesn't simply inhibit the person who's contributing. Of course, the fact that you're doing it in a public setting makes it very clear to everybody that knowledge sharing is really not the way to go. Now, we find over the course of several years of practicing this technique that probably within 3 or 4 sessions you can effectively shut down any kind of knowledge sharing across work groups. Of course, it does still tend to happen within work groups, and that probably should be okay. Now that solves your behavioral problem, but you do still have the political problem, which is that your senior managers want to be able to see or believe that knowledge sharing is on the increase. And for this, as I said, we use this technique called social network paralysis. It is a much more invasive technique, but very short term. It involves a survey, effectively, of the entire population of the organization. It must be compulsory. And in the survey, we ask just a couple of questions. Who do you share knowledge with, and who do you not share knowledge with, and why? Against each, you have an entire list of the employees of the organization, and they are ordered in order of superiority. So you have your managers, top managers at the top of the list, and then as you go down to the cleaners and the security guards and so on. Because of course you want to present the more politically correct people closer to the front, easier to select. But in addition to the survey, you must make it really, really clear that the people who are most connected, who share knowledge with most other employees, the most connected people will receive some kind of bonus or reward or prize of some kind. That's very important to make that clear right at the outset when you give them the survey. And you make a big show, you know, put everybody into the auditorium and make them fill them in and all of that. And then what we do is we take all of the results and we put them into some mapping software, and we produce the most glorious maps, all kinds of technicolor and shades and so on, to demonstrate the knowledge-sharing activity that people have reported in this big exercise that they've done in the auditorium. And you have a big prize-giving ceremony for the people who are the most highly networked in terms of sharing, you know, quote, the most people in terms of sharing knowledge. Now, senior managers love maps. They absolutely love maps. And they certainly don't go down the corridors of their organization to see the evidence with their own eyes. So we find that this technique, in fact, does pretty much shut the lid on any further pressure in the direction of knowledge sharing, while at the same time, with our depreciative inquiry techniques, effecting total paralysis of knowledge sharing.
Thank you, Dr. Vaine.
You're most welcome.